So I want to welcome those of you who are here and welcome prospectively those who are about to join us. I can already see there are people in the waiting room who are coming in now. For some reason, my screen is doing funny things, but Tali will take care of letting people in, letting them join us, and I thank you all for being here, as I said. I'm Peta, I'm with the Elijah Interfaith Institute. I see some new people here who have not been before, and it's always absolutely wonderful to welcome new people. And I see some of our regulars who've joined us throughout this series, and it's just fabulous to have you and have you continue learning with us. And I must say that this has been a wonderful series for me to participate in. I've learned so much from all our wonderful teachers. And nothing is less true about today's teacher, Rabbi Art Green. As you know from when he previously taught for us, Rabbi Green teaches at this time. So we've pre-recorded his teaching, but Alon, Tali, is Alon here? He's good, great. Hi, Alon. Alon, the director of the Elijah Interfaith Institute, is going to enable us to have a proper discussion as we go through the texts that Art is teaching. So although he is pre-recorded, by virtue of having Alon as a teacher here with us, we're able to make this a living session. And I hope that you will join us. The other thing that I wanted to say now, and I've already spoken to Padam about this, but I'm inviting all of you at the end of the session today, there will be time for people to offer prayers. And so if you, at the end of the session, have a short, and I do mean a brief prayer to offer, we would be we will welcome it. And that will be part of the session. But we're not going to spend more time. We're going to go straight into Rabbi Art Green's teaching. His short biographical note will go into the chat. As I said, it is pre-recorded, but we are going to pause and Alon will lead us in discussion. So I'm handing over to Tali to begin the sharing of his teaching. And I'm not hearing it.
Sorry, I was on mute.
That's okay.
Very good, Peta. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you all again. I wanted to say a word about about the act we're going to do today, the act of study, because it is so characteristic of Judaism and such an inherent part of Judaism. For us, the study of Torah, or the study of the teaching, and the extension of the teaching and the unpacking of the teaching is a devotional act. It's one of the ways in which we stand in relationship to God. Because we find God's presence in the Torah, and the Torah is sacred to us, how we read it, the act of understanding it, the act of participating in the ongoing project of understanding it and regeneration is part of our divine service. So it's in that spirit that I'm offering two texts today from the Hasidic tradition. Now, Alon and I both represent Judaism more or less from a Hasidic perspective in somewhat different ways, but we're both very much influenced by the Hasidic masters and their teachings. These are the masters who grew up in 18th century and early 19th century Eastern Europe and created a wonderful literature, mostly of interpretation around the Torah. As you will see today, from two different interpretations of two completely different verses that are saying more or less the same thing. So I'm going to start screen sharing. We have two texts which I've translated for us into English. Let me say that I have somewhat universalized these texts. The texts were written and originally spoken. These were oral texts which were then written down. They were preached and written entirely for a Jewish audience. And I have broadened that because I think that's the way we have to read these texts today. We have to universalize them. So I've done that. Otherwise, the texts are pretty complete, except where you see a little bit of an ellipsis where I just skip some repetition or more detail than you needed. So here we go, looking at the texts. and be with me as we screen share, and I hope I will still be with you in a corner there. Yes, here we are. The first is on the figure of Noah, who appears, of course, in the early part of Genesis, the story of Noah and the flood. And at the beginning of Noah's story, the verse says, in bold is the verse itself, the biblical verse itself, Noah was a righteous man, wholehearted in his generations. Noah walked with God. Notice that word wholehearted. Noah walked with God. Tamim. Tamim sometimes is translated as perfect, but I have chosen to translate it as wholehearted. And now we have a classic commentary, Rashi, who was the classic biblical commentator for the Jews. He lived in 11th century northern France. He says, commenting on this verse, of Abraham, who came afterwards, scripture says, the God before whom I walked. Whereas of Noah, it says Noah walked with God in our verse. You see the difference between walking with God and walking before God. He explains that Noah needed God to support him. He couldn't walk on his own. He needed to hold on to God, as it were. He needed some help in walking. Well, Abraham was strong enough in his righteousness that he could walk on his own. That's a sort of classic trope, the difference between Noah and Abraham. It's often explained that when God came to Noah and said, I'm going to destroy the world, Noah did not argue with God. He did not say, how can you destroy good people? Nor did he argue with his generation. He did not say, you must repent because God's going to destroy the world, like Jonah eventually did. He just said, all right, you want to save me and my family? That's okay. I'll build an ark big enough for us and the animals. He had no interest in the rest of the people, and therefore he was inferior to Abraham. Because when God came to Abraham and said, I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham said, will the judge of the whole earth not do justice? How can you destroy righteous people along with wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous people in the city, will you kill them? And he bargained God down. He bargained and bargained and bargained until he came down to 10. If there are 10 righteous in the city and they couldn't find 10, and then Abraham gave up. Only then did Abraham allow God to destroy. When God came to Moses after the golden calf and said, I'm going to destroy Israel, Moses said to God, you got to kill me first. If you're killing them, I ain't coming with you. You got to kill me first. Erase me from your book. And God backs down and doesn't kill him. So that the strong leader of the generation is one who stands up to God. But now we move on. This is
Rabbi Green, Art, before you move on, for some reason you've gone black again.
I've gone black.
See, we're there. That's better.
I'll try so hard not to go black.
Okay, so I've stopped you, I think, where there's a natural break. I don't think we'll need to re-record anything, but you're back. Good.
I have to be careful these days in talking about going black. You're going to say your screen has gone dark.
Oh dear. Yes, I'm not careful enough with my lingo. That's great.
Now we read the homily of the Hasidic master. We, the community of seekers and wrestlers, Yisrael, meaning those who seek God and those who wrestle with God, and our blessed Creator, are a single whole when we are attached to one another. Either without the other, as it were, is incomplete. And that's a rather daring statement. God is incomplete without humans. God is not whole without humans. We, the community of seekers and wrestlers, and our Creator, are a single whole, which means God needs humans as much as humans need God. Either without the other, as it were, he has to say, because you can't really say that about God, can you? That's his pulling back from heresy. Either without the other is incomplete. Thus God says, and it has a biblical source for it. God says in Exodus 17, my name is not whole and my throne is not whole. And the word for throne there is kisei, but the aleph is missing from the word kisei in the text. Ki yadal kesya. The aleph is missing, so the throne is not whole. We are called the blessed Creator's throne. God is not whole without us. Why are we the blessed Creator's throne? Because we are the place where God dwells on earth. God dwells in the human community. God dwells in the human community. You are seated upon the throne of our prayers. It used to be in the ancient temple, God was seated upon the cherubim. The cherubim were a seat, were a throne for God. We see that in the description of Solomon's temple. But now we say, V'atakadosh yoshev ti'ilot Yisrael. Now we say, you, O Holy One, are seated upon the throne of the prayers of seekers and wrestlers. We're the ones who are your home in this world. We're the ones who make you a tabernacle in this world. So we are the throne, and God is not whole without us. Which is to say, God is not present in the world without our recognizing God's presence in the world. There's an old Hebrew saying that says, Ein melech belo am. There is no king without a people. It's the people who make the king a king. Yeah, you can say, I think there was somebody who bought an island off the coast of Great Britain, if I remember at one point, and declared himself king of that little island and issued stamps. But it was a joke. Nobody believed him because he had no territory he was king over except a little dot with no population. You're not a king unless you have a community who crown you, who proclaim you king, who serve as your throne, which is to say, who are the presence, the very presence of this community of seekers is what gives you embodiment in the world. God has no embodiment in the world without a human community. That, you might say, is our form of incarnational theology. God is present, God is carnate, God is present in the flesh of the community that recognizes God and brings God to reality in the human world. God is not whole without us. Surely we without God are also incomplete. You can't be a complete human being without recognizing the divine nature of humanity, without recognizing the divine spark in humanity. Surely we without God, as purely physical, secular, worldly human beings who have no sense of the bigger picture, no sense that we are part of this magnificent creation that begins at the beginning of time and goes on forever, and we are one step in this endless chain of being. We without God are also incomplete. When we begin the process of awakening for God, when we turn on spiritually and desire to cleave to God from below, we arouse God's desire for us as well. The desire that links humans and God is a mutual desire. There's something about our passion that arouses passion in the one for each of us. Remember that Rabbi Akiva said all the scriptures are holy, but the Song of Songs is the Holy of Holies. There is something of great passion in the religious life, desire for one another. We are God's beloved and God is our lover. We arouse God's desire for us as well. When these two desires come together, there is one whole self. Now, my teacher, the late Hillel Zeitlin, who was not my teacher personally because he died in the Warsaw Ghetto when I was 1 year old, but Hillel Zeitlin said, yes, God creates humans in God's image, and we create God in our image. I like to say we are obliged to return the favor, which means that we sense within us somehow some divine mystery. We sense the presence of God within ourselves, but we don't know what that means. We don't know how to relate to it. We don't know how to access it. So we give God the only gift we can, which is the gift of our humanity. We remake the mysterious one in our image so that we can enter into relationship. In other words, I believe that all our images of God are human projections. Once more, I believe that all our images of God are human projections. Moses Maimonides already said something like that in the 12th century. But we do that, human projections are fine because we need them in order to relate. So when God, once more, when we begin the process of awakening for God and desire to cleave to God from below, we arouse God's desire for us as well. There is a mutuality. There is a mutual attraction, if you will, a magnetic attraction between the whole and the part. The whole is the oneness of being, which I call God, and the part is the human soul. And there's a magnetic attraction between the two. When these two desires come together, there is one whole self. This is the meaning of you shall be wholehearted. Now, the word tamim, wholehearted, which was said of Noah, and said also in Deuteronomy as a command, you shall be wholehearted, looks like a plural form. It could have been tam, but it's tamim, and that I am looks like a plural form. You shall be wholehearted with Havaya, your God. You shall be wholehearted with Havaya, your God, which means you, along with blessed Havaya, are called one whole self. You become, you together, we and God together become a whole heart. Become a whole heart. Each of us is a part of a heart, a half a heart. But we need one another. The divine needs us to be its representative, its expression, its articulation in this world. And we need it to inspire us to do what the world needs us to do. We need God as a source of that opens our hearts and that directs us, tells us to be more human and to be more divine, to be more like God and more like our true selves, to be more like the divine self that animates us. Back to the text. This was the great purpose of creation, that we first awaken ourselves from below to walk toward God. It says below, all those vertical metaphors I always translate into internal language. We awaken ourselves from without to turn inward toward God. That's what I really mean. When this does not happen, God forbid, and there's no arousal from our side, we don't wake ourselves up, we remain asleep, God first has to awaken us. Hey, wake up. My world's about to be destroyed. I'm about to destroy everything in the flood. Are you going to do anything about it? But in such a case, we accomplish nothing. Noah was one in whom there was no arousal from below. God, wanting this world to survive, had to awaken him first. He had to awaken in Noah the desire to cleave to God. This is the meaning of Noah needed God to support him. Abraham, our father, was strong in his righteous path, walking on his own. Remember, he walked before God, bringing about the awakening from below. Now, a very strong statement. It is for those who walk like Abraham that this world was created. We are here in order to discover God on our own, to be seekers, not to be just those who were found and tapped on the shoulder. You know, there is in the Bible a kind of tapped on the shoulder moment when God says to Abraham, go, with no prior warning, when God appears to Moses at the burning bush, when Amos the prophet says, God took me from behind the sheep. Those feel like tapped on the shoulder moments. But in the mystical tradition, it's always, no, it's being a seeker, it's preparing. It's walking the way until you get there, and all those passages are reinterpreted in the mystical tradition to make these people into seekers, to make these people into those who tried to find God. It is for those who walk like Abraham that this world was created. The scripture says, these are the generations of heaven and earth as they were created. As they were created. The very beginning of Genesis, Genesis 2, it says, these are the generations of heaven and earth as they were created. That phrase, as they were created in Hebrew, is Bihi Bar-Am. And it has the same consonants as Be-Avraham, through Abraham. The world was created. These are the generations of heaven and earth through Abraham. Through Abraham, for the sake of people like Abraham, for the sake of the seeker, for the sake of those who would go and struggle until they found God. For he was the one who aroused God from below. So the answer is Abraham is superior to Noah because he walks before God. He awakens the divine desire for humanity. He brings God and humans together in such a way that we become tamim, wholehearted, meaning that we, along with blessed Havaya, along with blessed the God of all being, is called one whole self. This is a passage from a book called Me'or Einayim, The Light of the Eyes, by Rabbi Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl. I had the privilege of translating that whole book into English. You could find it in the Stanford University Press catalog, The Light of the Eyes. The Rabbi of Chernobyl was one of the great preachers of early Hasidism. But now we're going to
Thank you so much, Tali, for stopping there, because before we move to the second text, I'm going to invite Alon to come onto the center stage and perhaps respond.
Thank you, Peta. So as you see, Art was teaching texts about walking with God, walking before God. And I'm a great believer in the fact that studies should be translated into action. Whoops.
Yes, but I don't think it's going to work. There you are, because it's hard for us to concentrate.
Oh, you can close your eyes and meditate then. So anyway, it's going to be walking, but I stand. I have a lot to say on this, but I would like to first take questions and response before I make any contribution. Then I can either respond on his behalf or then raise some theoretical methodological issues. Any questions from the gathered public? I can't see everyone, so Pete, I'll need you to moderate it.
Please, if you would like to participate, you can either use the hand symbol, or you can just unmute and say your name, and Tali will find you and spotlight you. If you'd like to participate or ask a question or comment on what you learned from that text.
No one?
Alona, looks like we're going to hear from you straight away.
Look that way, doesn't it? Okay. I'm going to respond to Art, and I would have much rather that he were here as I respond, but it's only fair to him that I should give him the chance to respond to me. What I'd like to do is to refer to his introduction.
I'm sorry, Alon. We're having there's a bit of an echo. We're hearing you a bit double. Is there?
Is this better? I got into a cave.
I think it is better. Yes, I think that is better.
Is it? Okay, yeah. Good. So here, the light's coming in from above, and I'm going to be inspired. So Art referenced the fact that himself and myself would share affinity with Hasidism, which we apply, as I said, in different ways. And then he also
sorry, no, we've lost you again. If others are hearing, Tali, have you got a suggestion?
I think the microphone might be just too close to your mouth.
Okay, is this better, Tali?
Yes. No, it stopped.
Now we've lost you entirely, Alon. I don't know if you can hear us.
I hear you perfectly. I hear you perfectly.
Back.
I'm back. Okay. So the second point had to do with the fact that he's taking texts that are.
Sorry, I haven't heard the first point. You will need to repeat.
The first point where he just said that the two of us apply Hasidic texts, but we do so differently. The second point he made had to do with the fact that these texts, he's taking them when they were set in a specific context and universalizing them. And the third point he made was that he takes texts that speak in terms of above and below, and he references them within the dichotomy of within and without. What he gets from that is a kind of universal spiritual language that is fundamentally relational. In other words, we need God. God needs us. God. I don't remember. Did he speak about God in our image, creating us in our image, and us returning him the favor? I'm not sure if when he spoke about returning the favor, if he also
did.
included. He did. He included the image of God in there. In other words, he applied to these texts the notion of the image of God, and the fullness of the image of God would be relational, and that in that sense is universal. Now that's very beautiful theology, and it's certainly that universality of it has its grounding in the text when the text speaks of Abraham and the world existing on his behalf. If the world exists on his behalf, then everyone is part of that world, and therefore everyone is part of that that perfection. So you can see why he would say that. And yet I'd like to go into some of the sections that he skipped and to highlight some of the terminology of the text itself, and then to ask, would it really work to universalize this text? I want to point out the fact that the text itself does not speak of the image of God at all. It is grounded in terms of our relationship with God. Even though he talks about Noah and Abraham, two people who precede the people of Israel, and certainly Noah does, there's no reference here to the image of God. The notion is cast in terms of above and below, drawing on Kabbalistic understandings of the drawing forth of flux and union, a supernal blessing. And the basic understanding is that our life, our ritual life, and our aspiration draw forth blessing from above. And the means of drawing that blessing is typically worship, Torah, and mitzvot. And it's ultimately grounded in an existential affinity between God and Israel. And the section that he skipped, he was talking about the fact that God and Israel are like male and female. So there's a marriage analogy, and that marriage analogy is founded on a fundamental existential complementarity, which for these authors is specific to Israel because it's they who form the bride that complements the groom. Now, I am not suggesting that you can't expand these meanings, but let's look at what it takes in order to engage in this expansion. For the Moranim, the meaning is that the work of the tzaddik is to draw divine bounty from above, and this he does through his spiritual aspiration, faithfulness, which then draws down the divine.
And the tzaddik alon, sorry, who is the tzaddik? You use that
The tzaddik
term.
in this case are Noah and Abraham, who draw forth the divine blessing. And they do so because of an existential connection that they have with God. The assumption is that there's a metaphysical common ground that is activated through the religious life, and it is through the human female initiator that the divine life descends below and wholeness is created. The initiative coming from above, as in the case of Noah, is considered imperfect because, in fact, it's one-sided and it doesn't bring forth the full union and therefore the full bounty and blessing with it. From Art's perspective, what we're talking about is the mutual complementarity of need. And I want to say in parentheses, Art described himself as a student of Hillel Zeitlin, but I hear very strongly Art's most primary teacher, namely A.J. Heschel. From that perspective, God needs us, and therefore if he fulfills his need by choosing Noah, I don't know how much qualitative advantage Abraham would have over him. So what I'd like to pose as a question to the absent Art is, to what extent has the universalizing of this text, stripping it of its theurgic, in other words, the impact on above, energetic, in other words, drawing down from below, vertical, in other words, addressing the inner outer rather than a higher lower, and also national, does it take this text and flatten it? And that is the price you have to pay for its universalization. And to what extent have we lost the dimension of depth in Art's reading? So this is the question, and God willing, one day we'll have Art's answer to it.
Thank you. As a result of Alon's contribution now, would anybody like to ask a question or make a comment? So that being the case, Tully, we will resume Rabbi Art Green's teaching. I asked him a question at this point, as you will hear.
Turn to the man who
Before we turn to the next text, can I just clarify something in this
please.
one? There are many people in this world today who are not seeking the divine, they're not the seekers, partly because their environment has turned them away from looking for a spiritual answer. And they've been trained to think in secular terms, in scientific terms, in terms that don't give them space for a spiritual or divine answer. Is this text telling us something about their less value as human beings? Is there?
I would say a couple of things there. People have been turned away from seeking the spirit primarily by those who peddle religion and do it badly and have lost the point of what it's all about. Religion as loyalty, religion as conformity, religion as settling down into bourgeois society with certain practices that you inherited from your ancestors, or going to church, or counting your beads, or putting on your tefillin, or whatever it is, and that's what it means to be religious. Among Jews, people often confuse the terms religious and observant. If you're observant of traditions, then you are religious. If you're not observant, you're not religious. But religious awareness is something else. Religious awareness is awareness of the presence of mystery in the universe, and the great unanswerable question of what we're doing here, and how we discover what we're doing here on this earth. Of course, that is approached through science. But science is the most religious activity there is if one does it with a sense of wonder and with an open heart. If you're asking the scientific questions and just giving technical answers, then Einstein would say you're not really a scientist. A scientist is confronting the great mystery and trying to find out some of its secrets, and at the same moment to stand in awe of how much we do not know. And for me, the essence of that religious life, is that sense of awe and wonder. And there are people who have that sense of awe and wonder, whom I consider deeply religious, without a single traditional ritual behavior in their lives, without going to church or temple or synagogue or whatever it is. So we have to think about it on a different level. I don't think we are involved anymore in the struggle of religion versus science. That was a 20th century struggle. The battle against Darwin. How can we possibly be religious if we believe in evolution, and the Scopes trial and all that? I think now it's a question. It's more a question of appreciation and finding a language to articulate our sense of wonder. All those people out there trying to save the planet are doing something, to my mind, that is deeply religious, because they are doing it out of appreciation of the wonder of existence. But giving them helping them to find, I won't say giving, that's too one-sided, but helping them to find a religious language for that. And in my case, showing people that there is a Jewish religious language for that is very much the focus of where I am, and very much the focus of why I do everything I do. So now we're going to turn to a second text. This text, as it happens, is by the master of the person who wrote the first one. Menachem Nochem of Chernobyl was a disciple of a person called the Preacher of Mezrich, the Maggid of Mezrich. And this is a text from the collection of the Maggid. And you'll see, though it's an entirely different biblical verse, an entirely different context, it is saying very much the same thing. And the verse is, the text is something you might find very obscure in Numbers chapter 10. I'm sure many of you were reading the Bible, never noticed it. Make for yourself 2 trumpets of silver. Here's the 2 silver trumpets with which Moses called the camp together. The phrase, Shtei Chatzotzerot, two trumpets is to be read as linked with, on the image of the throne was the image of an appearance of a man from above. That is the vision of Ezekiel. The vision of Ezekiel was considered which is considered the height of the most mysterious part of the Bible. In the old Bibles that were published for use in the German synagogues, which were published in volume after volume, some of them refused to translate that chapter from Hebrew into German because it was considered too holy to translate, impossible for anybody to understand. So this verse, two trumpets, is linked with, on the image of the throne was the appearance of a man from above. That is the vision of Ezekiel who sees the divine throne in heaven, and there's a human-like being on the throne. The answer is the phrase shte chatzotzrot. Sounds very much like shte chatzitzurot, two half forms. Shte chatzitzurot. Now, if you say it in the Yiddish pronunciation of Eastern Europe, it's shte chatzitzuris, shte chatzitzuris. Sounds almost exactly the same. Shte chatzitzuris, shte chatzitzuris. You mumble it a little bit, it's exactly the same. So what is he going to say? The two trumpets are two half forms. We can already guess what the half forms might be. A person, Adam, and all people are called Adam in Hebrew. A person is really only made up of Dalit and Mem. Dam, the latter two letters of Adam. Adam has three letters, Aleph, Dalit, Mem. But a person is only Dam. Those two letters may be taken to stand for Dibur and Malchut, speech and God's kingship. That anybody who reads it knows, but together they also comprise dam, or blood. A person is only what we call in English, flesh and blood. A person is only dam, is only flesh and blood with the power of speech. But when you attach yourself to the Blessed Holy One, who is the cosmic Aleph, because Aleph is number one, representing the oneness of all being, you become Adam. You take the Dalet Mem, you take the blood, and add the Aleph to it, and you become a full human being. The divine presence turns flesh and blood into humanity. There is no true human being that is not of the divine image. Now you remember, of course, that every human being is created in the divine image is the basis of the ethics of Judaism. I think we talked about it last time I did one of these sessions. This great debate between Rabbi Akiva and his friend Ben Azai as to what is the most basic rule of Torah. And Ben Azai insists that every human being is the image of God because that's absolutely universal. And so you only become Adam, you only become a full human being when you have the Aleph in you. Now, does that mean if you don't recognize God, you are not a full human being? You could read it that way. And I think some people who read this text probably see that. Well, if you're not religious, you're not really a whole person, religious in the conventional sense. But I just said that to be the image of God does not mean to walk around proclaiming, I believe in God, I believe in God. It means to act certain ways toward others, act certain ways toward the world. To be an Adam, a person who recognizes, who contains the presence of God within you, is not a matter of proclamation or article of faith, but a matter of how you live. That is most basic and I think a very Jewish attitude. It's not what you say, it's what you do. The Blessed Holy One entered, that's a word term for God, the Blessed Holy One. That's a classic rabbinic term for God, the Blessed Holy One. The Blessed Holy One entered into multiple contractions of his own self, coming through various worlds in order to become one with humans, who could not have withstood God's original brightness. This is an idea called tzimtzum in Hebrew, the self-reduction of God. As understood in Hasidism, which is different from the earlier Kabbalah, as understood in Hasidism, this is what it means. God wants to be present in the human mind. God wants us to be aware of God. But the brightness of divine light is so great that if we really saw that light with our mind's eye, our minds would blow apart. We would be dislodged, we would go mad, we would be struck by lightning, as it were, if we really saw the brightness of divine light. Therefore, God does us the favor of self-contraction, of limiting that light in order that we might be able to catch a glimpse of it. God hides in order to be revealed. I want to say that once more. God hides in order to be revealed. In order to be revealed in a degree that we can contain and experience, the lightness of divinity, the brightness of divine light comes down in reduced form. Again, it comes down, comes out from our depths in reduced form. Now, the person has to leave behind all corporeality, also traveling across many worlds, in order to become one with God. The journey is mutual. As God has to reduce God's self in order to fit into us, we have to make room in ourselves to contain the presence of God. And that means leaving behind our material concerns, leaving behind our concerns for money and status and livelihood and respect and all those things we care so much about. We have to open ourselves, open space in our inner self for that light to come in. So we too have to travel across many worlds in order to become one with God. Then our own individual consciousness is itself negated. In that moment of union between the divine self and the human self, we negate our own individual selves. We put ourselves aside to become one with the one. Such a person is truly called Adam, the one on the image of the throne, or the kisei, the one on the image of the throne. So now we say, yes, you are the Adam ala kisei. You are the Adam on the throne, because you have reduced yourself in such a way that you have made room for God in your life. And that word kisei, that word for throne, can also mean kisui, that which is hidden. So we have all kinds of plays on words in Hebrew to back this up. Whatever is awakened in us is awakened also within God. Now you hear the echo of the text we read before. Whatever is awakened in us is awakened also within God. If love is aroused in the tzaddik, so too is it aroused above. What we do here arouses something in the divine, awakens something in the divine. That can be true of any quality. This is true of those who are very pure, rising across all the worlds to become one with God. So these are the two chatzitzrot, half trumpets of kesef. Two trumpets of silver really means two half forms of longing. A person is only a chatzitzura, one half a trumpet, half of a whole form, dam or blood, or only the blood side, the blood and the flesh and blood side. But the aleph by itself, as it were, is also an incomplete form. That aleph needs to come into the world in the form of human beings. It needs us to realize it. It needs us to be the divine presence and act as the divine presence in this world, and act toward one another as divine presence in this world. Only when attached to one another are they made whole. Is God made whole through us, and are we made whole through God? That word kesef can also be derived from a root meaning longing. Nichsefa nafshi, my soul longs. When you long for the Blessed Holy One, God loves you as well. So the attraction again, that magnetic attraction between the whole and the part is affirmed here by the master as well. So the lesson of these two texts, what are they trying to say about human beings?
Would you like to stop the share screen to give us this final?
Yes, I think that's a good idea. So the message of the text, what are these two texts trying to say? To be a human being is to contain within you the presence of God. And that presence of God, when you make room for it, draws itself into you. There is a mutual attraction. As you long for God, you discover that somehow the whole is longing for its part as well. It is longing to be manifest in you, and you have to open your heart to it. And then you discover that to be more divine is to be more human. To be more human is to be more divine. And that has everything to do with how you act in the world and how you live in the world. To go through life as a vehicle of divine blessing, sharing divine blessing with others, is what it really means to be a religious person. So I leave you with that. I forgive you with that lesson and hope you have enjoyed this little venture into the world of text study, into the world of how the moment of study and the moment of insight is itself a way of being in the presence of the divine. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you so much. So once again, it's my pleasure to invite Alon to respond. But again, I'm inviting anybody who's listened to that lesson who would either like to ask a question, which Alon will answer, or make a comment on how that resonated for you, perhaps resonated with you if you're Jewish, or with your religious beliefs from other traditions. As I say, you can either raise your hand, use the hand symbol, or simply unmute and Tali will find you. Is anyone who would like to make a comment, make a response? So Alon, I'm going to invite you to come back at this point. There might be people who comment after you've commented.
Thank you, Peta. Can you hear me?
We can.
So I feel very much in sympathy with everything that Art said here. I'd like to point out that while the text doesn't speak of the image of God, it speaks about the human person. It speaks of the human person because of that wordplay of Dam and the Aleph creating Adam. But at the end of the day, it's talking about what it means to be a human person. And or more specifically, there really isn't any reference to Israel in this text. So in that way, it's not narrow. I feel what Art has done for us in this presentation is like a step-down transformer. He's taken an idea and he has popularized it, not just by expanding it or making it more understandable, but he's also taken down high voltage and turned it into a 110 volt, 9 volt battery. I don't know how much power. And I have some questions that I've been thinking of. To what extent is a kind of domestication that loses the intensity of the message? This is a highly mystical text. It's a text that talks about the fact that a person rises above all the worlds, rises above his subjectivity, his senses, reaches a union with God, and in that union with God, in a section that he omitted, has the ability to issue decrees that God will answer, fulfill, and all his actions. And the section that he omitted talks about the fact that even the physical copulations of the patriarchs were themselves acts carried out within a divine consciousness. What Art has presented us with is a sense of, again, very Hegelian, God seeks us, we seek God, and that then serves as a basis for a religious quest. But is it the fullness of the mystical quest that these texts talk about, and what is lost when we put them through this kind of step-down transformer? I'm even more troubled by his response to you earlier, Peta, and by his response and the comments that he made when teaching this text, that did away to a certain extent with the truly religious, consciously spiritual, consciously divine orientation, and made it, for reasons that are perfectly understandable, equivalent to good actions in the world, being a good human person, etc. So he wavered to a certain extent between wanting to give everyone equal value, whether or not they consciously proclaim God, and recognizing the particularity of God. I think in all that, and in service of his audience or in service of his theology, we do lose something of the extreme intensity and particularity of making God, mystical experience, union with God, the high point of those two halves, and turning it from the tzaddik, that is the Adam, with a special potency, to every person being Adam. And in that way, he makes the text speak more publicly, but also loses some of its potency.
I must share with you, Alon, that when Art first gave that answer to me, I thought it was very clever. But in retrospect, I had a little bit of the same response as you had, because if you're telling people that they really need to be on a spiritual quest, but then you make any quest for knowledge into a spiritual quest, I felt that was it's clever, but I'm not sure that it helps.
It's also valid from one perspective, but you lose something in the process.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your wisdom, as always. I'd love to hear from other people if anybody would like to make a comment on either of the texts or the experience of learning. Just share with me if you've enjoyed listening to a text teaching, because one of the things that we are looking at is whether we should use this model more frequently, teach a text or texts from different traditions. So it would be very valuable if anybody would like to comment on what that experience was for them, and of course on the content itself. Is there anyone here who'd like to make a comment? Ali, is anybody indicating to you? Padam, if that's you, we're hearing something in the background. Can we?
Sorry, okay.
Would you like to make a comment on the text study or the text?
If you wish, thank you very much. This is the first time we are really learning seriously about all these texts, because we are not used to learning text in our school days. I'm professionally an engineer. We didn't get much chance to learn these shastras. But now, today's learning, I pointed out few things noted as Noah walked with the God. But in my feeling, we all walk with the God all the time, and the God is within us. And I feel that being a human is the most gratefulness we have to be to God, because this is the most precious being created. And we have image of God, many, but it's all falls into one creator. We feel it, the super, and every human being has a God within, they say. But then somebody asked me, where is it then? Somebody says it is in the heart. But I think I mentioned that heart also, in which part the God is acting. Then being an engineer, I thought maybe it is the electronic pulse which keeps our heart pulsing, is the main point where the God resides within us. And as somebody just now said also, that what we do is to be union with the God. We pray for to be union with the God, which we feel it comes through yoga. Yoga in Sanskrit word meaning union with God. Thank you.
Thank you for both responding to the newness of the text study, but also to the content. And I think you resonated very much with what Art was teaching there. So thank you very much indeed. Anybody else like to make a comment or ask a question, I'd love to hear from you. And I know that there are people here in this call who have more experience in text study. Would anybody like to respond? Thank you, Jean. Please unmute yourself and join the conversation. There you go. Yes, you've done it.
I've used many words very fast, so I can't pretend to grasp all of it, especially as it's new to me as a Christian, although it's biblical, the interpretation. But it may not have spoken so much to my mind in grasping the essence of what he was trying to say, but to my heart, my soul. And because this for me is the heart of the matter, because we can, in any religion, get bogged down with all sorts of rules and regulations and traditions, and we've always done it this way, and we've always believed that. And yet he is getting to the essence, that union with God, and that his image and likeness is in me, and my image and likeness is in him, because I came from him, and please God, I'm going back to him one day. And I just feel he lifted my heart, because this union is what we long for. And I don't mean sitting in ecstasy for hours on end and doing nothing. I mean having that oneness within me and sharing that oneness. And again, not between preaching as we would like sometimes in our different Christian circles. We say, have you been saved, brother? Forget about being saved, brother. Using that oneness of God that is within me, that it reflects out to others in the simplest ways. Having a smile when somebody turns up just when you're trying to do something else. You know, this is where you can show that union, that love, and give the fullness. This may be very simplistic, and I would love to have all those words that Art said and read to study again, but this is what I feel was so wonderful of what he said.
Thank you. Yes, Jean, you've made an important point. I think we will disseminate the texts, because there are not only people who are here who would like to do it again, and that you're the second person to comment, but we also know that many people see this on Facebook and later on. So I think our disseminating of the texts or putting them somewhere on our website where they're accessible will be a very important step. Would you like to do more text study from different teachers, Jean? Is that something that appeals to you?
Actually, I meant to say it. This makes me, what can I say? No, this vibrates with the same message that Meister Eckhart, the Jesuit teacher, brings out very strongly.
But Jean, your comment, you're referencing the content. Peter was asking about the methodology of text study.
Okay, that would be fine.
Thank you. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Any other comments? Just give one more moment in case people would like to join. No, in that case, we're going to move on to the prayer section. And I mentioned a moment ago at the beginning as we opened that there is space for people who would like to offer a prayer. In addition to you being invited to comment on the readings and teachings that we're going to be bringing in the next few weeks, we also do have space if people would like to offer a prayer. But we also have some people lined up to offer the prayer. Alan says he likes the approach, and thank you, Alan. And we loved your response a couple of weeks ago as well. We're very pleased to have you with us. Would anybody, if you would like to offer a prayer, I'm going to invite you at the end, but my first person today, I'll invite Hannah because I saw her come in. I know she's here. And as many of you know, she's a part of our team, our Praying Together team, and she will offer us a prayer from the Jewish tradition, which follows directly from Art's teaching, and then we'll hear from other traditions. So Hannah. And you are muted, Hannah, you'll need to unmute. Are you able to unmute, Hannah? Hannah, are you able to unmute? This is a bit strange. I don't know what's going on. Hannah, can you hear us? Hannah, can you hear us? You need to unmute. There we go.
Peter?
Yes. We're invited. Were you?
Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. We're inviting you. We are hearing something in the background though. Is that?
Yes, just 1 second. I need to turn something off.
Thank you. There we go.
Okay, so thank you. It's what can I say? It's special to be with you. This time from Jerusalem. Last week I was in 2 weeks ago. I offered the prayer with Rasan Manasra, which was a great honor, from the UK, from Crawley. And we still need prayers for peace, and it just goes on, and this is very hard. So today I'm taking my inspiration from the Siddur of the Movement for Reform Judaism, the UK one, and this is a prayer for interfaith understanding, followed by prayer in time of war. God of all creation, we stand in awe before you, impelled by visions of human harmony. We are children of many traditions, inheritors of shared wisdom and tragic misunderstanding, of proud hopes and humble successes. Now it is time for us to meet in memory and truth, in courage and trust, in love and promise. In that which we share, let us see the common prayer of humanity. Where we differ, let us wonder at human freedom. In our unity and our differences, let us know the uniqueness that is God. May our courage match our convictions, and our integrity match our hope. May our faith in you bring us closer to each other. May our meeting with past and present bring blessing for the future. And now I have actually mislaid the, okay. At this time of conflict, we turn to you, God, as the creator of all human beings. Be with your children, all nations and religions. Give us strength and courage in this time of uncertainty and fear. Any war claims its victims on all sides. Have mercy on us and bring this conflict speedily to an end, so that its casualties may be fewer and the damage lighter. So that acts of violence and bloodshed may be replaced with words and acts of conciliation. Shelter under your care those who perish, and show compassion to those who mourn for them. For those injured in body and mind, bring a perfect healing, so that their lives not be destroyed. Oseh shalom bimromav. May the one who brings peace in the highest bring peace to us and to all Israel and to the whole world. And let us say Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Yes. Not easy times still here.
No.
I'd like to invite Heather to join us. Is she there? We
She's
find
here.
Heather. Ah, there she is. How wonderful. Thank you, Heather, for joining us.
So I found this prayer by Peter J. Scagnelli, who was an American Roman Catholic. And I was delighted to find, it was written a long time ago, and I was delighted to find in the third line a reference to human dignity in the context of war. So somebody thought of it before us a long time ago. Now, I couldn't join most of the meeting today, but I arrived kind of right at the end of Art's second talk. Now, this prayer starts by addressing God as the author and giver of peace. And reading that, I thought, it really struck me that peace comes from God, and we rely on God because we're clearly not capable of maintaining peace ourselves without God's input. But then listening to Art, what really resonated with me was he said, we're made whole through God, and God is drawn into you. And so I thought that's really interesting. So we and God, as God is drawn into us, are the joint authors of peace. And I just felt really inspired by that as an idea. So here's the prayer. O God, author and giver of peace, in whose image and likeness each of us has been created, with a human dignity worthy of respect on earth and destined for eternal glory. Listen to the cry that rises from every corner of this fragile earth, from our human family torn by violent conflict. Give peace in our time, O good and gracious God. That peace which Jesus told us, and as we have experienced in these days, is a peace which the world cannot give. To world leaders, grant the wisdom to see beyond the boundaries of race, religion, and nation, to that common humanity that makes us all your children and brothers and sisters to one another. To those who have taken up arms in anger or revenge, or even in the cause of justice, grant the grace of conversion to the path of peaceful dialogue and constructive collaboration. To the innocent who live in the shadow of war and terror, especially the frightened children, be a shelter and strength, their haven and hope. And to those who have already lost their lives, open wide your arms and enfold them all in the embrace of your compassion, healing, and everlasting life. Amen.
Amen. I felt that that was written for now, right for now. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Earlier, Padam offered to offer a prayer
Yes.
for us today, and I'd like to welcome him.
Thank you, Peta. First of all, namaste to all of you. I thought I'll make a simple prayer, especially at this time when we need peace. We call this in our Shastras, prayer of peace. We say Om, meaning God. O God, lead us from the unreal to real. O God, lead us from darkness to light. O God, lead us from death to immortality. And we chant these mantras, always saying Om, Santi, Santi, Santi. We always say 3 times. For the reason is that to our body, mind, and soul, and also for the 3 lok, the heaven, earth, and the underneath. That is the reason for saying always 3 times in our prayer, Om, Santi, Santi, meaning peace. Om, Om, Om. Thank you.
Thank you for enriching us. Is there anyone else who would like to offer a prayer this time? that being the case, could I ask you please, Tali, to make sure everybody's on gallery view? And
Peta,
there was Monica. Would you like to offer a prayer?
I wish to offer one prayer. I am Christian, but in this case, I offer a Muslim prayer for the people of Jerusalem, for the Jews, the Muslim prayer for the Jews.
Thank you.
Shield me, O you who protect from corruption and repel all evil, by your names, words, and words, from the evil of Satan and of the powerful, such that if an oppressor or tyrant threat me unjustly, he will be taken by an enveloping chastisement of Allah.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you. It's really beautiful. And I hope that in future gatherings, you will, all of you, feel free to offer prayers. We would love to hear your words and to be part of our prayer community. When we come together, and this is why I asked Tali to share with us the gallery view, one of the beautiful things is to see the diversity of people who are here from different religious traditions and different places in the world. And to know that we've just shared something special. Art mentioned at the outset that the act of learning is an act of devotion. And I think that this was it really was devotional. And Jane has just written that she felt it too, that this was an act of devotion by learning together. And as we continue to move forward and learn from each other's sources, together, we're a learning community and a spiritual community together. Let's take a moment in silence together to acknowledge the gift that we've just had of shared learning, and to acknowledge the privilege we have to be able to be together on Zoom, as it might be, but it's still a privilege. Let's take a moment in silence to reflect on that. And unfortunately, I've had to compare my privilege, and I recognize my privilege, my comparative physical safety, the blessings of love and family and friends, the ability to be in community. I have so many things for which I must be grateful and understand that it is a privilege. And at the same time, my heart breaks every day nowadays to see the suffering of people in war. On my street, I meet daily the families of the hostages in Gaza. We hear about death and suffering. And as I've said at every gathering we've had since October 7th, that even though the world's cameras have moved to the Holy Land and to the Middle East, there are suffering going on in the rest of the world as well. And we mustn't forget or abandon our prayers for others when we focus back in a particular place in the world. So at the same time as I live with this gratitude and sense of providence, I'm aware that puts me in the minority at the moment in this world. And I think we also need to spend one moment together with our thoughts on those who need our prayers. And even though we've just heard from Heather and Monica and Hannah, beautiful prayers, and Padam as well, for others that had words. Let's take a moment, wordless, just thinking of the other. So 1 minute of our time on behalf of those who need us and more to come back together as community. I want to thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for listening and participating. For those of you who've offered prayers and made comments, we're very grateful that you're part of the community. For our two teachers, Rabbi Art and Rabbi Alon, thank you for your wisdom and sharing with us. It's a real privilege. Next week is the first Thursday of the month, and that means we will have an in-person session. We'll be at St. George's Church. So anyone in Jerusalem is welcome to join us, and we will be putting out the information. But we will also have a Zoom teaching. Sister Maureen Goodman from the Brahma Kumaris, who has been with us in the past, is joining us again to offer a further teaching. And Reverend Stuart Gillam, who is going to join us today, his son has been not well, and he spent his time with his son, but he's going to be back, and we'll have him hopefully in person in Jerusalem, all being well with his son's health. That will be the case. But Maureen will be online, and so you who join us online will be very much part of our community, and I look forward to seeing in person those who are in Jerusalem and can join us. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much indeed.